Hello, welcome to our sixth and final session. Woohoo! Um, so as I said, looking at the overview, we're at the very last section here. Today we're going to look for evidence of learning and student responses, as well as analyze some teacher moves. And then because this is our last session, you'll do a short self-reflection at the end. Here are the objectives, which I pretty much just explained. We're looking for compelling evidence of student learning, the objective, and then going to analyze teacher moves and how they facilitate the discussion and student comprehension of the text. So we talked about evidence of student learning in session 4, so this is a review. We know that students are learning if their responses are building on the central understanding. So here in my example from my discussion on Malala the Brave, I highlighted 3 responses from Nancy, Amanda, and Lindsay that showed learning. The learning target for this section of the text was for students to understand that the Taliban are a group of people who follow the religion of Islam in a very extreme way. They have very strict rules, especially for women and girls. Violence is used to enforce their rules. So Nancy was able to tell us that they're terrorists. Amanda hit on the aspect that there's strict rules, and then Lindsay was able to tell us how they are not the traditional Muslim beliefs. So they're an extreme group. So though the 3 sentences I highlighted there, that would be compelling evidence of student learning. So now I'd like you to show evidence of student learning, either in your own discussion or in an example I provided. So I'm going to switch over to the Google Doc for this session, which is right here. So you only have to do one of these. So if you are able to complete your second discussion and you have this transcript, then you can skip over this Malala example. If you weren't able to do a second discussion, then you can use the Malala one to answer this question. So you only have to do one or the other. So for the Malala one, I provided the learning target. This is obviously from a different section of the text of my discussion. Here was the transcript. And then, so what I want you to do is highlight, looks like the highlight feature up here. Highlight where you see evidence of student learning. And then once you highlight that, you can come down here and just kind of explain your thinking of why you feel that is evidence of student learning. If you did, if you have a transcript from your own discussion, if you're able to lead a second one, then you can just skip down to this part and put the learning target for whatever prompt you want to use. You just have to do this once. So put the learning target, what you wanted the students to get from that segment of the text, and then just copy and paste your transcription there. Again, highlight in the transcription where there's evidence of student learning, and then explain just your thinking on that. So you can go ahead and pause this presentation and complete that, and then come back when you're ready. Okay, I'm going to shift to analyzing teacher moves now. This is the same exchange from a slide just before this. This time I highlighted my response after the students shared. So after they shared those 3 ideas about what they know about the Taliban, I asked them to look back into the text and talk about those strict rules that the author explained to us. So here I was probing the students to give me some more information. I wanted them to go back into the text before they responded, so that way their response was focused exactly on what the author said instead of just kind of either guessing or giving random answers. So having them look back into the text was going to keep them focused in responding to this. So by probing them for more, I was able to get them to show understanding that the Taliban's strict rules were mostly focused on women and girls. So you can see after I probed for examples of those rules, Amanda hit on how they were specific for women and girls, and gave some examples, like not being able to wear makeup or bright clothing and not being able to laugh out loud. This was obviously important because as we continued reading, or as we continued to read, they were going to learn about the girls not being allowed to attend school. So it was important that they understood that the Taliban, these strict rules, yes, men were also had to follow some of these rules, but a lot of them were really, really geared towards women and girls, which obviously brings up the whole aspect of Malala standing up for education. Okay, so this is the top half of this is the same transcription that we've been looking at, but I've included the second half of the exchange. So you can see here, this is where I cut it off on the previous slides. And here, starting with Nancy, is the rest of the discussion that we had around this part of the text. So although I consider this a productive prompt, it does not mean that it was entirely perfect. So when I looked at this discussion, I noticed there was a missed opportunity and a teacher move I could have used. So if you look over here to the right side of the screen, I have the learning target again. And the last part of that learning target was for students to understand that the Taliban used violence. So as you can see in the transcription, none of the students brought up that fact. So none of them really talked about any of the violence, or that they used violence, which was clearly stated in the text. They didn't go into a ton of detail about the violence, but the author made it a point for the reader to understand that they were using violence to enforce their rules. So looking back, I wish I would have followed up where I have highlighted here. Down here, after we kind of had a discussion about how the women were treated differently than the men. So here, where I have highlighted, I wish I would have followed up with a question like, what might have happened if the laws weren't followed? And this would have hopefully led the students to discuss the violence. It was important for them to understand the violence the Taliban used because it would have helped the students with understanding how big of a danger it was for Malala to continue to go to school. So over here at the learning target, like I said, I explained what the missed opportunity was, which was prompting the students about the Taliban using violence. And then my revision, or what I would have liked to change, would have been this follow-up prompt right about here in the discussion, asking what might have happened. And my rationale, or my why, is, because it was important for them to understand the violence. And then it helps the students later on in the text understand the risk that Malala was putting her life in by continuing to go to school. So you're going to pause the presentation again, and over here in the Google Doc, I'll show you real quick. Down here, I want you to find a part in your discussion where there was a missed opportunity for a teacher move. So paste the transcription. If it's the same one as up here, that's fine. It doesn't matter if they're the same or not. And then, so just what was the missed opportunity? So how I had said that the missed opportunity was to get the students to understand that the Taliban used violence. And then if you could go back, what would you change or revise? So my revision was the follow-up prompt. And then why would you make this change? So I explained over here that it was important, for them to understand the violence so they would later understand the risk that Malala put her life in later on. So this was my example here, which is what you're doing pretty much here. I just put it in boxes. So remember, missed opportunities can be in the part of your discussion that was productive or in an area where the discussion was not productive. Okay, so like I had said in mine, this was a productive prompt. However, there was still a missed opportunity. So go ahead and I'll pause so that you can finish that, and then you can come back for the last little part of the presentation. Okay, the last thing is a self-reflection. There's just 2 questions at the very end of the Google Doc for you to reflect on the entire professional development. If there's anything else that you want to share with me, please do so. And that is, I'll just show you real quickly. So right under here, that's self-reflection. And those are just the 2 questions I'm looking for you to answer. So thank you a million times again. If there's anything you need or are wondering, whether it's now or next year, do not hesitate to ask. I've really, really appreciated all the work you've done. It has helped me tremendously. It's helped me beyond just my class. It's helped me with working my way to become a reading specialist. So I thank you very, very, very much. And you are done as soon as you finish that reflection. See you later.